is the Integrated National Transit Database Analysis System. There is a new module within that system, the Rural and Tribal NTD module. Today's presenters will be myself, Rob Tasneri. I'm the Senior Technical Director for National RTAP. We also have David Gray, the Regional Planning Manager for the South Carolina Department of Transportation. David will be giving us kind of the state perspective of NTD, how the state uses NTD, collects the data, as well as how the state of South Carolina and, of course, any other state could use a new module within INTDAS. And finally, we'll have Albert Gann. He's a professor for the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering with the Florida International University. Professor Albert was the person to help us in developing this. And actually, I'm getting into my history. Briefly, our history. National RTAP, as part of our statement of work, is to provide the rural NTD data, make it a little bit more accessible than just having to go to the FTA's website in order to download the various files. And what we've been doing for the past 6 years is really to take the information off the FTA website and put it into a spreadsheet so that folks are able to sort and filter the data. And, you know, that's the best we've been able to do since then. Last year, or probably a year and a half ago, one of our staff members was at a workshop where Professor Gann had done a presentation on INTDAS, and a few people within the audience had asked about why there wasn't any rural or tribal transit information within INTDAS. And so we had discussed with Professor Gann about the possibility of getting that information within INTDAS, and eventually developed an agreement with the Florida International University in order to develop that module. It has been a year that we've been working with Professor Gann and his team in order to produce this module. The module was available in April. Anybody that actually was already registered within INTDAS was able to access that module, and we did a soft launch just to make sure that everything was working and to receive comments from the folks that were starting to use it. National RTAP has also hired Albert and his team in order to maintain the system so that it's always running accurately, as well as to make sure that the data is updated. Albert will be explaining about it, but we plan on having the available NTD data within the system once the data is made available. Okay. At this time, I'd like to present David Gray. He's with the South Carolina Department of Transportation, and David will be talking about how his team works with the NTD and how he plans on using this new module. David?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's go to the first slide, and we'll start right off. South Carolina uses. Currently we have 3 uses that we have for transit data, and those uses center around 3 principal activities. The first use of our transit data that we have is to comply with, of course, the National Transit Database reporting requirements. We also utilize transit data specific to populate the allocation formula utilized by our agency to sub-allocate 5311 funds. And then we also have a agency report that we produce yearly about transit activities. These 3 activities are the primary uses of our transit data, but we have some other activities which I won't belabor, but I will mention later on in the presentation. Can we go to the next slide, please? So first of all, I'd like to talk about the first use. Our first use is NTD data reporting. A little bit of background. The NTD was established by Congress as a source of transit data and statistics. Basically, any subrecipient who receives 5307 or 5311 funds is required by statute to submit data to NTD. South Carolina DOT does the reporting for our rural providers, so we collect the data on their behalf and report directly to NTD. The legislative requirement for NTD is found in Title IX USC 5335A. Next slide, please. Under NTD reporting requirements, SCDOT is obliged to collect data about our different transit providers within the state. Some of the factors that we collect are the number of revenue vehicles that the provider operates, the expenditures and expenditures for operations and expenditures for capital activities, the sources of the revenue, 5311, 5316 or 17 under safety lieu, and any other revenue sources that they use to pay for those expenditures. We're also obliged to collect information such as about service data such as passenger trips, revenue miles, vehicles traveled, and revenue hours and vehicles operated. We also have to collect safety data such as accidents, injuries, and fatalities. Next, please. The second use that we have for our transit data is in the allocation of our 5311 funds. We have a formula model that we utilize here at SCDOT to allocate our 5311 funds, and that model incorporates 6 measures that we use to sub-allocate those funds. 3 of the measures are data that we collect as part of the NTD reporting process. These measures are the amount of 5311 revenue that was received by the subrecipient in the previous fiscal year. That is 35% of the allocation calculation. The number of passenger trips made in the previous fiscal year, this is one of our NTD data points that we collect. That's 15% of the allocation calculation. The number of vehicle revenue miles, that's the second NTD data point that we collect. 20% of that is part of the allocation calculation. The number of vehicle revenue hours that were operated in the previous fiscal year, again, the third measure that we use, that accounts for 20% of the allocation. And then at 5% each, we have the cost per passenger trip in the previous fiscal year and the population of the rural service area. Next, please. We use this allocation formula to ensure a fair and equitable distribution of our funds. Our current model has been in use since 2011, and we are currently is currently under review. The reason for this is we want to be able to ensure that the model will continue to ensure fair and equitable distribution of our funds. Next, please. And then the third major use for our transit data is to compile the agency's yearly transit report. We call this report Transit Trends, and what it does is it focuses on statewide transit activities as well as the activities of individual transit agencies. Some of the factors that we measure are the number of vehicles, the number of passenger trips, the number of revenue miles and hours, revenues and expenses, the cost per passenger trip, cost per revenue mile, and cost per revenue hour. We also look at passenger trips per vehicle revenue mile and the vehicle revenue hour. One more, please. And as is becoming a theme here, you will note that the transit data collected is also some of the same data we collect in the NTD reporting process. Again, specifically passenger trips, vehicle revenue miles and hours, revenues, and expenses. Incidentally, this report is available online at our website. It is listed down at the bottom of the screen there. When you get over to our website, you will see it under a heading called Planning and Performance, and you will see the SFY 2014 Transit Trends Annual Report. If you would like to look at that, it is available free of charge and out there for your convenience. Next, please. As mentioned before, we also have some other uses of transit data. Specifically, if we use it to craft responses to transit-related questions posed by our legislature. We have long-term planning and programmatic activities that we use this data for. This data is also distributed to our transit providers for their own analytical use, and of course, we make it available for use by the general public. Next, please. In the future, we are planning to use our transit data for efficiency and effectiveness evaluations. What we'd like to do is use our transit data in peer-to-peer comparisons so that we see how South Carolina is faring in relation to other states. Some of our peer states are North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and some others. Some of the data that we anticipate using in this analysis will include the number of revenue vehicles, revenues and expenses, passenger trips, vehicle revenue miles and hours, and our safety data. Again, accidents, injuries, and fatalities. Next, please. And again, as mentioned before, the transit data utilized in these evaluations is also data which we are collecting as part of the NTD reporting. Next, please. So we've talked about what we use NTD data for, but why do we have such a reliance on the use of NTD data? Well, our use of that is twofold. To begin, NTD data is measurable. Right now, we are currently awaiting performance standards from FTA. But in the meantime, NTD data provides a readily available system of current measures which can be applied uniformly by all states. Also, NTD data is confirmed. NTD, I know for a fact, analyzes transit data at a national level, a state and local level, and certifies that the data is accurate. What this does is eliminates any uncertainty as to the validity of the data, so we know going in that the data is clean and we're comfortable using it. Next, please. Which brings us to the central role of this webinar, how we see the role of INTDAS in our use. We see it as a one-stop shop for our NTD data needs. The data in INTDAS is available for both transit providers and for state transportation agencies. It's all there for both urban and rural providers, and it's convenient. The data is also timely, and it's a uniform layout. As was mentioned earlier, you don't have to go to the NTD site and download all of the different Excel sheets that NTD publishes. It's all right here. And most of all, the data can be manipulated, we feel, to generate reports which we plan to use to provide results for comparative analysis. So that is a little bit about how, at the state level, we use data. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Gann, who can go more fully into the module and how it works. So, Dr. Gann?
Okay, sorry, I was on mute. I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you, David, and thank you, Rob. Just now you mentioned the INTD website, and I think you can. I hope you can all see my screen. And this is the INTD website that you just mentioned, and I'm sure some of you are familiar. If you use the INTD data, and chances are you probably get your data from this website or from the RTAP website that Rob just mentioned. To get the INTD data, and what you do is you click on this link and you come to this page, and you can see here to the left you have the urban INTD data, and so you also INTD also publish some monthly urban data as well as the safety and security data. As you can see, because INTD data are collected and distributed annually, and that's why data are in separate files for different years, and so that is not very convenient. If you want to do some kind of trend analysis, you need to have the time series data. And but FTA has kind of produced some time series data as well for most of the major variables, but only for the urban system. And to the right, you can see here, this is where you can get your rural INTD data. And 2013 has been published for since 2 or 3 months ago. And so just now, David mentioned some of the performance measures that he uses, and one of them is cost per passenger trip. And to get this performance measures, and you cannot get it directly from the spreadsheet from this website, and you actually have to do the calculation yourself. And in this case, it's actually the operating expense, and you have to divide it by the passenger trips. And these two variables are in 2 different files. And first, to get that numbers, you actually have to go to one of these files called Subrecipient financial data. And if you click on it and open, and this is where you will be able to find the data for your system. So of course you have to go down the list to find the system that you are looking for, and going to the right, and so it happens to be on the first column. You will find the total annual expense, and so you get that numbers from this spreadsheet, and then you have to go to another spreadsheet to get the trip data. Okay, so if you open this file and you go and find your system, and let me see. Okay, so you go to the end, you get the total trip numbers for the system, and then you divide one by the others to get the cost per trip information. So if you need to do a time series analysis, and so what you need to do is to go to previous data from the previous years, and you can see INTD, rural INTD data are available from 2007 up to 2013 from the current years. So what that means is you have to do this, repeat this, get this from 2012 and 11 and so on. This will take a long time, obviously, and also if you are trying to do a comparison with a few peer systems, say 5 peer systems that you would like to compare, and then you have to find do the calculations for 5 systems. That is going to take a long time. So long that normally you would just give up and probably just give it to a consultant, right, and have them do it for you. So we are here to help with the system, right? So what you can do is to go to just type in ftis.org, and then you come to our homepage, and the system kind of look a little bit old simply because it has been there since 2005 that we have not updated, and in fact we got a contract from FDOT, and we are going to try to modernize the website. But that is probably not very important. What is important is what is in our system called INTDAS, and INTDAS is just one of the subcomponents of the FTIS system that we have here. So as now, some of you might have already visited our website. For those of you who have not, to get the ruler NTD system, you click on this menu items, and so we have a bunch of things that may not be too important for you to read, and no, it might be. I want to get to the website and to go there and just click on this icon here, enter INTDAS web version. And I would say web version because we actually started as a desktop version. From year around 2001, we released the desktop versions, and then we started to convert to the web versions in 2005, and we released it in 2006, the web version. So the system has been there for quite some time. So if you click on that icon, and you're going to open this login page, and you will see that now we have two sub-component systems, one for urban NTD and the other one for rural NTD. By default, it's going to be for urban NTD. If you are the first-time user, and what you have to do is to click on this access request form, and now read the term and conditions, and then you check the checkbox and fill out the application and register. And then you're going to get a password in your email. Then you can go back to the login page with your password that you received in your email. And so we are going to look at the ruler NTD system today. So I'm going to use my password and to enter. And what you can do is if you only use the ruler NTD system, and what you might want to do is not having to make the selection each time, you can just click on the checkbox here. So it's going to remember on this computer that, so the next time all you have to do is to come to this login page, and your data will be just one click away already. Just click on go, and it's going to take you into the main screen. And the interface is quite straightforward, and there are really just two main screens. The first main screen is for you to select the year of data that you are interested in, and the recipients and subrecipients that you are looking for. And the second screen is for you to select very specific variables or performance measures that you want to do your analysis. Okay. So by default, you can see the year of data we have. By default, it always go from 2008 to 2013. When the system was first released, we only had data until 2012, and about 1 or 2 weeks ago, we added the 2013 data, and that is the latest data available from the FTA. And if you click on this list, you can see we actually have data going back to 2007. And rural NTD data, actually the data collection actually started in 2006 as the first year, but FTA did not make available the data from 2006, so we don't have the 2006 data. And I guess one reason is because, right, since it was the first years of data, and I think the data was not as reliable. And even for 2007, data, to me, it looked a little bit rough, and there seems to be a lot of missing data and some inconsistent data. And but over the years, and the data obviously got better, and as agency got more familiar with the data. So we start the data from 2008, and if you're kind of trying to probably hide the data from 2007. But in any case, now if you need the 2007 data, you can obviously select that. So we have, by default, you have 6 years of data, and you will see that and this is when you first log in. This is what you're going to see by default. Recipient, you can have state agency as the and the tribal system and they all belong to a category called what we call the recipients. So data are available for both recipient and subrecipients. If you are only interested in just the Indian tribe system, and you can just uncheck this, right? You can see here between 2008 and 2013, there are a total of 126 Indian tribe systems. And if you look at state, you have 56. And if you only go with 2013, we actually have 53. So let me go back to 2008. And so if you are interested in just the recipient data, and for example, if you are from a state DOT, and you might be interested in just the statewide data, so you can just go ahead and click and select any of the system. As you see, as soon as I select a state agency, and it's going to list all the subrecipients below it, and these are there are 49 subrecipients from FDOT. You can select multiple recipients as well. Just if I go ahead and click one more, and but you have to remember to hold down the control key if you want to select more than one system. Otherwise, it will be just one system at a time, okay, one recipient at a time. Okay. So as soon as you have selected some recipients, and these are the two recipients that have been selected, and you can go ahead and say, I want to look at the statewide data for Florida and Georgia, and display the data on the NTD forms. You can just click on View NTD Forms, and you can see here we have a total of six NTD forms: RU 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, and RU 30. RU 10 and RU 30 are for recipients, and for subrecipients, RU 20, for example, because I have not selected any subrecipients, so it says that there are no subrecipients in this case, so there are no data. But if you go to RU 30, you will be able to see the data for FDOT in year 2008. And if you want to go to next year, and you just check, click on this button, the navigation button, to go to different years of data and different recipients. Okay, so I'm going to go back and select. Okay. I mean, with recipient, you can also look at the standard reports. Just view standard reports. So the report is kind of interactive, and because I've selected only two recipients, I have not selected any subrecipients. So this is grayed out, and we have basically two kind of analysis that you can do in terms of the standard reports. You can do the trend report, and it's going to show you the numbers across different years, or you can do the peers, and if you select peers, and in this case, we have selected two recipients, and it's going to show a report for the two DOT that we have selected. And in terms of the type of reports, we have one report called efficiency report, basically for the efficiency measures. As you can see, it's kind of a longer report that includes some performance measures for operating costs, for capital costs, and for fares and revenues, and also vehicle utilizations. So if you look at the effective measures, so we have someone just registered, and the effectiveness measures, no, we don't have as many variables. Okay, so so if you go to the trend report, and so this, we are looking at the data for FDOT. You can also just go ahead and select Georgia DOT, and you are going to get a new report. So this is the standard reports that we have, and you don't have to make selections of any variables because the set of performance measures are standard. So if you like to get this report outside the system, you can always export the tables to different formats, different file formats. And if I click on Excel, and it's going to export it to an Excel, so you have the tables outside the system that you can include in a report. Of course, there are also different formats that you can publish, also in PDF and also in graphic files if you want it. And you can be exported to the Word file as well. Okay, so let me go back. So what we are looking at were only for recipients, and so if you are interested in subrecipients, so I can just select a few systems, and if you want to select multiple systems, remember you have to click on, you have to hold down the control key, and just randomly select a few subrecipients that are part of the SCDOT recipient. Okay, so so after you have made your selections, and if you continue to want to use the system or the subrecipient that you have selected, and what you can do is to save them. I'll just call it my group, and I can save it. And so once it's saved, if I clear it, and the next time you come in, you can quickly select just by clicking on my group, and you will quickly select the system that you have just saved. And of course, you can delete it if you want. Okay, so so we have looked at the INTD form. We have looked at the standard reports, and let me go back to the INTD forms again. And just now, because we have selected only the recipient, we didn't select any subrecipient. So now, if you go to RU20, and you will see that it has the data for the subrecipient I have selected. So you can just click on all this button to navigate to the different systems, the data for the different systems you have selected. So next, I'm going to go to the next screen and to select just the variables that you are interested in, not an entire set of data as I just showed you from the standard report. Okay, so you can click on the select variables button. It's going to take you to the second major screen. As I said, they are ready in terms of the input interface. They are just two pages. And so on this screen, on top, you will see that first you have to select the agency types, and it can either be recipient and subrecipient, simply because the data are not the same, right? And subrecipient will be data for individual system, and the recipient will be for the entire state, for example. So since we have selected some subrecipient, you automatically recognize that, assumes that you are going to want to look at the subrecipient data. Okay, so to the left of the screen, we have a list of variables, and these are all the variables that are available from the Ruder NTD data, okay, from the original, right? And so these are the original numbers. And how about to the right side, we have a list of what we call the performance variables. For example, just like we mentioned, cost per passenger trips, right? So now you can always go down the list to look at the variables you have. There are not a whole lot of them. So you can also type, type trips, for example, and it's going to short list the list of variables. And so the one that we were talking about was cost per passenger trips. So that is related to this variable, which we call operating expense per total earning passenger trip So we kind of use the original variable names instead of calling it cost. And by calling it cost, it could be operating cost or it could be capital cost, right? In this case, it's only the operating cost. So here we call it operating expense. So so we can make the selection. So you'll get this variable is selected, and you can see here once it's selected, is listed here. And I think David also mentions another variable called revenue miles divided by revenue hours, right? And so in this case, and it's something we call speed, right? If you divide the revenue miles by the revenue hours, is the same as what we call the average speed. So I'll go ahead and select the average speed, and let me reset it. And I can also select operating expense here if and over here the list of performance measures, and some of them are exactly the same as for example, let's say if I type in expense, and you will see that total annual expenses, and this is exactly the same as this one. Okay, so you can select from both lists, and simply because these variables, even though they are not calculated, but it's very commonly used, and it's also included in our standard report, and that's why we list them here, and it's kind of redundant, but we just make it easy list all the important performance variables in one place. Okay. So I've selected two variables, and I can select one more. That's just by clicking on, by holding down the control key, and always remember that. And if you don't, and then it's going to get rid of all this, and if you just click one time, it's going to select just that one variable. So with that, I have four variables, and what I can do is to say retrieve data. So so that's how quickly you can get your data for the four variables for all the different years of data and all the 5 systems that I have selected. Notice here you also have the mode, right? And it depends on what variable you selected. And in this case, because average speed is a variable for different modes, and of course, because in this case the system only has one mode, and so and if a system has multiple modes, you're going to see different numbers. So and all means that is for all the variable modes from a subrecipient. Okay, and because only have one system, that's why the numbers are the same. Okay. So and so this is what we call a flat tables, right? And you can export this data. Now just click on Excel, and then you're going to open up Excel, and so you get your data outside the system that you can do your own analysis. Let me just close this. Okay. So and if you and the flat table is a little bit difficult to read, right? And so what we do is we have the so-called the cross tables, and that will allow you to display two across tables of different years for different systems, right? So you can select different variables, and of all the 4 variables, I have only average speed as for different modes, and the others is only for the entire subrecipient. And some of you might wonder, why don't we have separate data for different modes? The reason is because operating expense is only a variable for the entire subrecipient, even though the unnamed passenger trip is a variable for different modes. So what we have to do is to sum all the trips for different modes and divide operating expense by the total trips, and to get that this data. So what else? The tables is probably still not that easy to see, and we also provide charts that you can do. So you can just click on different subrecipients, and you can click on different variables, and you quickly get the different data. Okay. You can also hold down the control key, let's say, if you want to compare different systems for every speed, and you can very quickly see the trends for multiple systems for over the years. And we also have the peers data that you can do. So these are for all the 5 systems that I have selected. And you can do it for different variables. Okay. So let me go back then again. Another data function that I like to mention is something with what we call inflations, right? And it only applies to those variables in dollars, right? And so in this case, operating expense per total earning percentage trip. And because you have different years, obviously, if you want to adjust for the inflation, and you can do it just by clicking on inflation. Okay, and so it's going to recognize only those variables that has dollar value, and so you can select. For example, if I selected this variable, just say apply, and you will see that it added another column. No, it's just based on 2014. Basically, convert the dollars to the constant dollars based on the 2014. So the number becomes comparable across different years. So I think that's all I have, and I realize that we have taken a lot of time. And I guess another thing that I like to mention is also we have set up some system groups that you can make the selection very quickly. And again, it's the same thing. You can save the variables that you have spent time to identify, and so you want to save them. So the next time you come in, you can pick the same variable very quickly. You will see that if I clear it and I select my variables, and I can select the same variable very quickly. And like I say, we have the group that we have already set up. So you can select this one, right? And you can, if you want to have all the efficiency measures, you can also do that. So you can select a set of variables very quickly. Okay. So that's all I have, and I hope this get you started, and just go to our website and submit registrations, and you will get a password and be able to use the system and get the data very quickly. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Albert, for your presentation on the INTDAS system for rural and tribal transit providers. At this time, we have a few minutes. If you have any questions, you can click on the questions in the control panel and type in your question, and we'll be able to answer them. I know that one question was okay, I think I had sent this out. What we are planning on doing, this isn't really about, it's about this, but we will be posting the PowerPoint, and we have recorded this webinar, and it will be posted on the National RTAP website probably within a week. You just go under webinars and then click on the appropriate webinar, and you'll be able to access the information. There's no question, not questions, more, thank you very much for sharing this and all. One question that, here we go. What is the time frame for the FTA performance measures to be complete? I don't know if we can answer that. Albert, do you?
Yeah, we update it every year. Normally, the data is released in around December each year. The data is always a year behind. And once the data are posted on the NTD website, so what we do is we take the data and clean up. By saying clean up, it means that we have to standardize the data simply because very often, the format of the data are not the same from year to year. So what we have to do, because we integrate all the data all in the same standard database, so we have to standardize them and put so that they can be combined into one data set, integrated data set. And then we have to do some calculations for the different performance measures. Some of them are taken directly, like operating expenses, but some of the variables we have to do the calculation. And also for recipient data, for the RU30 form, FDA really does not release the data for the recipient. And so what we have to do is we have to sum the data from all the subrecipients from each recipient and put them together, and then also do the calculation performance measure for both recipients and subrecipients. And that actually takes a few weeks. And so each year we are probably looking at around March, right? And if the data is released in December, we might take 1 to 2 months to add the data from the new year. Okay, I'm not sure if they answered the questions, but
yeah, I wasn't sure whether they meant that, for example, FTA is developing performance measures. Maybe it did have to do with the information within the rural and tribal module. I guess unless they can write me another message, I think we'll assume that. One thing, Albert, that just to let people know that there is a tutorial on how to use this system.
And so we have you still have my screen, right?
Yeah, we're still on your
screen. Okay, just click on the view tutorials. And I thought I could have used this ones without.
Yeah.
And welcome to tutorial 202 for INTDAS.
So we basically have 2 tutorials. One is for the first screen. Things related to the first main screen, and then you have tutorial 2 for the other screen, and it can be helpful for the new users. And basically, it's the same thing that I just went through.
Yes, but in the event that they need it, there is a tutorial that's available. Once again, this webinar is being recorded, and we will be providing it on our website probably within a week. Okay, I did get the email, and it does have to do about the development of the performance measures by FTA, and I don't know. I don't know whether I haven't heard anything about a timeline for FTA developing their performance measures or finalizing them. I don't know whether David or Albert, whether
I'm not aware of it. Yeah.
I'm not aware of that timeline either.
Okay. If I do have this person that asked the question, and what I can do is research it and email you back, as well as everybody else that attended this webinar. It may be that it's not known right at the moment, or it may be whatever information that we can get from FTA. We'll send it to everyone that has participated in this webinar. One thing that I've noticed, Albert, is you have some new members during the presentation. I think there's been about 7 or 8 new members. So I'm happy to see that. Yeah, I'm happy to see that folks are interested in the module, both the rural and tribal as well as the urban, I'm assuming. So I'm happy to see that people are doing that. I think that that's it for the questions. At this time, what I'm going to, Albert, I'm going to just, since we don't have questions, I'm going to change it over to my screen, just so that you have the contact information. Okay. In the event that you have to get a hold of any of us, if you have questions, Albert, maybe I put down your phone number, I'm sorry, but if you have questions for Professor Gan, you may want to email him, because I know that he's busy and teaching as well.
No, it's summertime. It's summertime. I'm not teaching.
Oh, that's right too. That's right. And David, his information is up here as well. So if you have any questions for them, certainly David, you could use David as a peer. South Carolina DOT does a lot of work with the NTD data, both in reporting and as well as utilizing it in order to, allocation of funding to the various subrecipients and things like that. Since there are no more questions, I'd just like to thank our presenters. Professor Albert Gan, once again, is with the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the Florida International University. His team was the group that developed the INTDAS, as well as the new module, the Rural and Tribal INTDAS, as well as David Gray. David is the Regional Planning Manager at the South Carolina DOT. I'd like to thank David for giving us the state perspective on how the NTD is used, and it seems like this module that National RTAP and Professor Gan's team has worked on will be very helpful for the state DOTs as well as researchers and transit agencies that are looking to see, compare their system with other systems throughout the United States. Okay, so at this time I'm going to close the webinar. I'd like to thank everybody, and I hope that you go on to the National RTAP website, which is www.nationalrtap.org, in order to access the recording of this, as well as the slide presentation, and just to access it to get information about National RTAP resources and services. And if you're interested in other webinars that National RTAP has presented in the past, as well as those in the future, you'll be able to see them listed on our website. And so thank you all very much. And given that we're getting close to July 4th, I'd like to wish everybody a happy July 4th. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.